You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
I've got 7:03 p.m. and we'll just run through our introduced members and commission and staff, and we'll run through our attendance here. Joe Viuzzo. Joe, are you here?
Viuzzo's here, present.
Thank you, Joe. Chuck Anders, chair. We're supposed to say our name after every time we speak. I just remember that. Joe Chadwick. Joe, are you here?
Joe Chadwick is present.
Thank you, Joe. Fred Russo. Fred, are you here?
Fred Russo is present.
Yes, thank you. Sharon Hutner. Sharon, are you here?
Sharon Hutner is present.
Thank you, Sharon. And Massimo, I think, is not here. Is that correct?
I do not see him on the call, no. And Marcy Paluzzi previously let us know that she won't be able to make it tonight.
Okay, so not Massimo and Marcy are not going to make it. And our staff this evening, Harry Smith, our town planner. Harry, you here?
I'm here, Harry Smith.
And our assistant planner, Evan Brining. Evan, are you here?
I'm here.
And I think our clerk recording secretary lurking in the background is Michelle Martin. We'll follow our normal format for public hearings, which is that the applicant will go first. When the applicant makes its presentation, including any consultants that it may have. After that, we turn it over to the commission and town staff. We typically get a town report. Hear what the staff has to say. We open it up to questions, comments from the commission members and staff. And then after we've finished that, we open it up to the public. I'm going to ask Evan or Harry to review the process that we undertake to participate in the remote meeting, in the Zoom meeting process, if you'd like to participate. And then after the public portion, we allow the applicant to respond to the public portion. We may or may not close the public hearings. It's certainly not unusual to have public hearings extend over one or more meetings. With that, I'll ask Harry or Joe. Well, first of all, I to read the notice of public. Do we have one of those, Harry?
We do, and I can read it since Marcy's not here. If you'd like, legal notice, Town of Branford, the Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Branford, Connecticut hereby gives notice of public hearings to be held on Thursday, July 7th, 2022 at 7 p.m. by remote technology. To consider the applications listed below. Information regarding how to participate in the public hearings will be provided on the commission's meeting agenda. They'll be posted on the town's website at least 24 hours prior to the meeting. Number one, application 22.5.5, special exception for indoor recreation, Taekwondo school to be located at 803, 873 West Main Street. Dante Branch, applicant, Joe Maruzzi, care of JMM Properties, LLC owner. Application number two, number 22.5.6, special exception and coastal site plan for a restaurant fast food without drive-through window. It's a food truck park to be located at 257 East Main Street. Jordan Flowers, applicant, Robert Lundgren, owner. And we have a third application on the legal notice, but it was actually a mistake because that application was never filed. And it is number 22.5.2, special exception for grading, section 6.8, within 100 feet of critical coastal resources, tidal wetlands located at 125 Thimble Islands Road. Matthew and Stephanie Milano, applicants and owners. As I mentioned, that application is not on the agenda. It was never filed. The application we have tonight is for a site plan and coastal area management approval. At said hearings, all persons will have the right to be heard. Copies are on file in the Planning and Zoning Commission's office at the Planning and Zoning Department, 1019 Main Street, Branford, Connecticut 06405. Written communications may be sent to the above address or to planning and zoning at branfordct.gov.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, Harry. Harry or Evan, do you want to review the process for participation in the public portion of this meeting for the public, if you could do that?
Sure. If you'd like to participate in the public hearing, down at the bottom of your screen, there is a reactions button. Once you select that, there's an option to raise your hand. If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand, or you can indicate in the chat that you would like to participate. And if that doesn't work, maybe wave your hand in front of the camera. I'll try to pick you up if I can. If you're dialing in by phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand. And everybody, please say your name for the record at the beginning of your statement or question. And if there is any applicant here, maybe send me a message or write in the chat that you are an applicant, just so I can unmute you for when your application review begins.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, Evan. With that, we'll proceed with our agenda. And the first public hearing item is number 1 is Sunrise Cove Association, Inc., Sunrise Cove Camp, care of Robert Caldarella, applicant. It's a zoning regulation amendment to amend section 3.3A and add a new section 3.5 regarding pre-existing summer cottage campsites. This is I believe we actually technically opened the public hearing and continued it, but this is the first substantive content meeting that we'll hear on this one. Is the applicant ready to proceed on that?
Yes, Mr. Chair. For the record, this is James Perito. I'm an attorney at Halloran Sage at 265 Church Street in New Haven. And I'm a resident here in Branford. I represent Sunrise Cove Association, Inc., which is the applicant and has an address of Sunrise Cove Road in Branford. Also with me tonight is John O'Connor, a longtime resident of Sunrise Cove, and Bob Caldarella, who is the current president on that. So with that, I'd like to start off. So we, as the chairman indicated, we're here seeking to amend the regulations by adding to 3.3A subsection 2, a section that would be entitled pre-existing summer cottage campsites. So I have to give you a little background for those of you that don't know why we're looking to do this. The applicant is the owner of the land comprising the Sunrise Cove campsite on Sunrise Cove Road. The site currently contains 35 separate residential structures and was originally zoned residential R2. The site and the residence all predated the enactment of zoning regulations by the town. Mr. O'Connor, who has lived there for many years and sort of the historian there, told me that in 1946, the first cottages were built by the returning World War II veterans. And shortly after that, there was 35 cottages, about 42 children occupied all summer. By 1959, the 35 cottage owners purchased the land from the Double Beach Corporation, which used to be a club in that area, and formed the Sunrise Cove Corporation. Over time, and after many years and decades of having it as a summer campsite, in the early 90s, many of the original owners had aged and only a few of the cottages were even used full time. So the corporation started to look into what would be the possibilities of making these cottages a little bit more livable, a little bit more used at either end of the season, because at that point it was seasonal. So they, and up to that point, they had provided a wonderful summer environment for generations here in Branford. So as a private association, the first thing they did was to enact a really detailed set of regulations and standards that would guide the upgrades to any of the cottages. They worked with the town building department and the fire department to see what were the kinds of things that would be important to do for the safety of the residents in the surrounding area. Before any of the 35 homeowners could add or rebuild or reconstruct or modernize any of the campsites, they had to submit detailed plans to the Sunrise Cove Building Committee, which makes sure the plans comply with their own standards. And then they make a recommendation to the board of directors, which in turn gives the final approval for the owner to proceed to the town to then get its building and zoning approvals from the town. The location of the upgraded cottage, the height of the home, and the nature of the surrounding improvements are all subject to the approval of the association and its standards. So in the mid to late 90s, the corporation went to the town and on a couple different occasions, and ultimately were granted a special development area, planned development district, with some conditions that at that time, seem to have been workable for the property. One of the issues with the PDD is that by its nature back then and in your current regulations is that the PDD's building the detailed development plans have a 5-year time period on them with one possible extension. That works fine for development of condos, like we've seen at Harbor Village, Turtle Bay, a couple of the other projects down there where, that worked because the PDDs came in at a 5-year time period. Most of those condo developments were built in 5 years, all set and done. At Sunrise Cove, that mechanism really, at the beginning, was not going to work because many of the owners have no desire to change their homes, their cottages. They're fine the way they are. And so the 5-year limitation was always going to be an impediment because it was never going to be able to be completed at that point. So at some point in time, the detailed development plans expired. And from that point forward, and I'm going to back up a little bit, in the year 2000, the 50-year-old surface water line serving the association started to fail. And at that point, the association installed an upgraded water system that could be utilized year-round. The entire site is served with public sewers, and the association removed its sort of self-imposed seasonal limitation so that some of the cottage owners could convert. And that's sort of what happened over time. Some actually converted to year-round when the PDD was fully enforced. Some changed over time with either variances or special exceptions. And I want to say about a year ago, in discussions with staff, there was some thought that maybe a better procedure could be put in place. And so I took some time, I went through the regulations, and I tried to come up with a regulation that in really the simplest form did really one basic thing. And that was to make conforming what has been, frankly, a non-conforming use for decades now. Because what you have here is one big lot with 35 individual residential units, which is not really permitted in R2 zone. And with the expiration of the detailed development plans, there really isn't the PDD aspect to help it there. So I filed the regulation, and I'll go through it at the end of the presentation, but the staff had a couple suggestions. So during the course of time, I submitted one that had revisions to it that I think helped with some of the concerns that the staff had. So, so currently the association has the following breakdown of within the cottage. There's 17 cottages that have been winterized, renovated, and slightly expanded. There's 18 cottages that have not been renovated or expanded. And so that gives you the 35. So over half are really still cottages. Of the buildings that have been winterized, only 10 to 12 are lived in year-round. So this regulation change is not going to result in sort of a wholesale change to this community. This community has remained fairly static. 1 or 2 homes over time might, change to a year-round use. So the regulation would allow, as of right, in the residential zone, conversion of pre-existing summer cottage camps to year-round residential homes with increased height, floor area, and coverage, so long as the individual units and the entire community meet the bulk requirements of the zone, which Sunrise Cove does. The regulation, I believe, is the minimum needed to permit the association community to apply for these conversions. The proposed regulation would bring Sunrise Coast Camp into compliance with the regulations and eliminate the need for variances and allow for conversion of cottages to year-round homes. The regulation could be applicable to other summer camp associations, and I'll get to that in a minute, and provide a mechanism for bringing non-conforming uses and structures into conformity. So one of the points that the preliminary report raised was how would this be in compliance with the comprehensive plan of development? So I went back and took a look and went through the CPOD, which your last plan was in 2019. And I think that the regulation complies with the following goals in that plan. Section 11.1, and these are fairly broad, but these are goals within the plan. That states guide and manage residential areas and encourage housing maintenance and improvement. Specifically, encourage maintenance of existing housing units, encourage upgrade of housing units to avoid functional obsolescence and to meet current and future housing needs and desires. I think this does this. It provides a means of converting older cottages. I mean, they may stay a cottage, but they could be upgraded to more modern structures with meeting the building codes and the fire codes, which is important, and I think meets that goal. Number two, housing for an aging population. With an aging population, Branford should consider ways to facilitate people living in their housing as they age, sort of aging in place. Many of the people at Sunrise Cove Camp, that's exactly what they've done here. They came as young adults, or they came as children, and then the parents left it to them, and then they stay here. By converting these into year-round homes, or allowing that possibility as of right, then you're allowing for an alternative housing situation for people aging in place. The third is section 17.3, consistency with growth principles. That principle number 2 says expand housing opportunities and design choices to accommodate a variety of household types and needs. Well, Sunrise Cove, these are not lavish shorefront houses. These are not 6,000-7,000 square feet homes built up on the rocks. These are modest homes as cottages, and they're modest homes even when they're doubled up to be with an upstairs. I think that meets that goal. You're providing a shoreline housing option for people that are not super wealthy people, like in other parts of town. I also believe that this complies with the Branford zoning regulations, specifically regulation 1.2A, where it says conserve the value of buildings and encourage the most appropriate use of land. That's number 10. Number 14, provide for the development of housing opportunities. We just mentioned that. 15, provide for housing choice and economic diversity in housing. Again, that's what this does. In an area of town that typically there's not that much choice for people. Also, and probably most importantly, under section 8.1, nonconformities, the section recognizes that nonconforming uses and structures exist and are protected, but encourages the eventual elimination of those nonconformities. Here, the town, by approving the PDD, had started the process of moving Sunrise Cove camps into conformity. Unfortunately, as I mentioned before, the PDD mechanism just doesn't fit this particular situation. I think this regulation helps to solve that. It helps to bring this community into conformity, at least as to the uses. And again, it remains its limited number of homes, bless you, and it's limited to home renovations and conversions. So let me specifically read the regulation as it was revised and submitted. So section 3.5, pre-existing summer cottage campsite. Any pre-existing summer cottage campsite which contains more than one individual detached residential unit may permit each unit located thereon to be renovated or replaced with a year-round unit so long as the site is served by sufficient water and sewer utilities. Replacement units may be increased in height, coverage, and floor area so long as the entire site meets the bulk standards of the applicable zone, period. For purposes of this section, pre-existing summer cottage campsite means a parcel of land, and this was added, abutting or adjacent to Long Island Sound, which on the date of the enactment of the zoning regulations had more than one, this was added, but no less than 4, individual detached cottages or camps originally utilized only during the summer season. As again, I tried to keep it as simple and direct as possible. Specifically with Sunrise Cove, when the PDD was filed, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, the site plan that was filed with it, which is on record, if you had a moment to go through it, and it lists the requirements of zoning for the R2 zone, in every instance, the permitted area of the site, the minimum site, 4,500 square feet, we have close to 240,000. Maximum building area, 50% of the site, we're permitted almost 94,000, we have 20,000. Lot coverage, 35% of the site, we'd be permitted about 65,000, we have 20,000. I mean, we're really confined and we keep it that way. Maximum dimensions, square and heights, things like that, front and side yards, we meet those. In those instances where there was a cottage that did not meet a side yard, one of the things that this original plan did was they moved it away. They made it compliant. And that plan was in place and has been followed all the way through. So as I said, the regulation is really aimed at making the use of multifamily prior summer cottages now permitted under the regulation. I would be happy to answer any questions. I know that some of the people that have lived there may wish to speak and tell you their experiences. I think I tried to address some of the points that the draft opinion about staff report came in with, and I would certainly be happy to ask and answer any more questions.
Chuck Andrews Chair, thank you, Mr. Perito. Do you have anyone else from your, from the applicant's team or whatever that wants to say anything at this time, or
I would invite Mr. O'Connor or Mr. O'Connor if he'd like to speak, because he's been through this entire process. If he's still on, I think he was. John, you have to mute yourself, John.
Yes, I am on, if this is the time to speak.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I first resided here in 1946 when my parents, my father returned from World War II, and within 6 months built the cottage that we lived in for over 50 years. And I want to thank the Planning and Zoning Commission for approving the Special Development District 25 years ago that allowed my wife and I to tear down that original cottage and spend the last 23 years in a building that has more room. And the last 21 years, we've been allowed to live there year round. I very much want to make it as easy as possible for the other residents of Sunrise Cove to enjoy what I have. And I think it's very important that the Planning and Zoning Commission adopt this, which will make it easier and more understandable, I think, when our applicants come before you for permission. I do want to caution the Planning and Zoning that if you do approve, to be careful about adding amendments to it that can become problems that you weren't expecting, okay? When we applied 25 years ago, we had one individual who lived behind us who strongly objected to our plan and appeared at every meeting, wrote letters to the Branford Review, and called us outsiders that were somehow taking advantage of the town of Branford. And his main objections were that our new buildings we were asking for 30 feet in height. Well, the R2 zone at that time, I believe, allowed for 40 feet. We were only asking for 30 feet. And we had a tree line that was well over 40 feet that was already blocking his view. So that wasn't a very good argument. And the other argument he had was that if we were allowed to live there year round, we would bring tons of children into the school system, and he would not be able to walk his dog down there during the winter when no one was around. Unfortunately, when we got our permission from the Planning and Zoning Commission for the Special Development District, there were two conditions that we weren't expecting. And one was, both of the conditions seemed to accommodate this one individual. One was that we were restricted to 20 feet tall buildings above first floor, from first floor to peak of roof. And the second was that we could not live there during the winter months. My wife and I went ahead and built with the restriction of the 20 feet from first floor to peak of roof. We were allowed 5 feet under the first floor, so our building was really 25 feet tall, or is 25 feet tall. Once the special development district went away, now people could build to 30 feet. And we wish we could have 5 more feet, but because that restriction was on there, there's nothing we can do about it. Our house is built and it's finished. The second thing that created quite a problem for our family was the seasonal living. At the time that was put in, we had surface water. We were not concerned about that at the time, but when our surface water broke down 3.5 to 4 years into the 5-year plan, and we had to make a decision of what kind of water line we were going to put in that would last the next 50 years, it made sense to put in a deep water line so that people could live here year round. And when we did that 4.5 years into it, in December, We were served, my wife and I, with a cease and desist order for living in our house, along with the other several people that were living down here year round. Fortunately, we had a first selectman at that time that called a meeting and of all the interested parties and decided that we could stay in our homes. The unfortunate part was the cease and desist order was issued to us on December 14th, and we were told we had to be out in 10 days on Christmas Eve, which sounds like a Scrooge sort of story, but we lived through that. So I do want to caution the Planning and Zoning Commission from adding any conditions that, even though they might not realize that they could create problems in the future, that they can create problems in the future. I also want to point out that the 12 or the residents down here do not have any children in the Branford school system. It's been over 8 years since anyone has attended the Branford school system from this area. Part of it is the population age of our population down here. But in the 23 years or 21 years of year-round living, we've had 3 people that have attended the school system. 2 of them attended for 2 years, their junior and senior year of high school, and 1 attended, I believe, for part of middle school and all of high school. So less than 1 child has ever attended the school system and put a burden on the town that way. As the former vice chairman of the Board of Education, I'm very familiar with that. I also want the Planning and Zoning Commission to know that we are contributing to the town down here. This year, the 35 owners will pay $263,000 to the town of Branford in property tax. And they will pay an additional $18,000 on the land tax. So a total of $281,000, which amounts to over $8,000 per unit. So we are certainly paying our fair share. The 12 units that have rebuilt are paying an average of $13,000 in taxes. The ones on the water are paying more. The ones that are back from the water are paying less, but an average of $13,000 a year in taxes to Branford. And since 50% of the taxes go towards the school system, which I'm very glad it does as a retiree from the school system, I think that we're not adding to the tax burden, but contributing to the taxes of Branford and actually helping the situation. The final thing I want to say is that when we first built our cottage 76 years ago, almost all of Branford along the water was seasonal. And somehow all of the other places in Branford got to convert to year-round, and it didn't seem to be a hassle. But for some reason, it's been a hassle for Sunrise Cove to get the permission, and we've had to go through a number of loops. And I just want to reiterate what Jim, the point he made. Before a person can rebuild down here at Sunrise Cove, they have to first go through our building committee, which goes it over their application in fine detail to make sure that they're not taking more than 684 square feet of space of our land, that the buildings are properly placed with the space between each person, that they're blocking views as little as possible. And then the building committee makes a recommendation to the board at Branford, at Sunrise Cove, and the board has to approve it. So there's 2 approvals that need to be had before we go to the Zoning Board of Appeals and then to the Planning and Zoning Commission in Branford. And then after all is said and done and they have their permit and they start building, we have in our building regulations that the association hires a inspector who at 4 places along the construction makes sure that the building is being built the way it was approved, and no bigger, no larger, no taller than what was approved. So we, anyone that wants to build really has to go through a lot down here. And if there's any way we can make it just a little bit smoother, a little bit more convenient, and I think that this regulation will help do that. So thank you very much for your time.
Chuck Anders here. Thank you, Mr. O'Connor. Is that complete your initial presentation, Mr. Perito?
Yes, Mr. Chair, with one point that Mr. O'Connor mentioned, the Board and Zoning of Appeals. That was the process because they needed variances to allow for essentially the maintenance of a non-conforming use, and that step would be eliminated if the regulation was put in place. Anyone that would be under the CAM review, they'd still have to come to planning and zoning for that, obviously. If there's any FEMA issues that they have to comply with and needed variances for that, again, they'd have to go on that route. Not all the units down there need that, but the regulation would eliminate essentially the non-conforming use aspect of the entire area.
Chuck Anderson, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Perito. This time then, let's turn it over to staff. Evan, did you prepare a staff report on this one?
I did. I prepared a preliminary staff report a number of weeks ago. I'll go through it briefly, but I would like to update that staff report based on today's presentation and also based on a submission from the neighboring association for some recommended language changes to what Mr. Perito had submitted. But let me once again go through that staff report. Mr. O'Connor had touched upon two of the conditions from the 1997 PDD or Special Plan Development District approval. And I just wanted to clarify that those two conditions were that no cottage should be occupied between December 1st and April 1st, and no cottage shall exceed 20 feet in height as measured from the first floor elevation to the highest peak of the roof. This amendment was referred to the South Central Connecticut Regional Planning Commission. We did receive a response back that was circulated to the commission members. And they did not find any issues with the submitted reg amendment. Concerning the proposed texts, I think Mr. Perito already went over what the changes were after he read my staff report, but I just wanted to give some reason to the commission. I felt that other properties might have fell within the definition that he had provided, specifically some of the non-conforming older properties that might have outdated or predated our zoning regs. They might have 2 or 3 structures on a residential property. And also the mobile home parks might have been able to fit into that definition as well. And also we wanted to come up with a way to demonstrate that the property was originally utilized only during summer season, or at least have a way that the town could recognize that this was a cottage camp that was originally only utilized during that summer season. Mr. Perito went over the possible solutions that we had introduced. The first was that the property in that definition would have to be directly adjacent to the Long Island Sound, and also increase that the number of individual detached garages or cottages to a minimum of 4. And like I said, staff recommends at this time to continue the public hearing to the next meeting. So I can update that staff report based on today's presentation and also some comments from the public, specifically that submitted recommended language. I believe its author is actually here today representing the neighboring association. So I think we should begin with him for the public comments. And that's my staff report for now.
Chuck Anderson, Chair. Thank you, Evan. Perhaps, and I think I did see that, I believe it's Mr. Verdun representing the neighboring association that he has to cut out. So maybe we can jump to him right now if that's appropriate. And with the understanding that staff's recommending, I assume it's likely that we will continue this public hearing. But with that said, perhaps we can jump to Mr. Verdun if he has to exit early. Evan, is that, Evan and Harry, does that work?
Absolutely.
Okay. So Mr. Verdun, are you around? Can you?
I am. Thank you, Chairman Andrews. I am around and I've been unmuted. My name again, for the record, is Peter Verdun. I am an attorney with the law firm of Verdun, Young and Margolis, located in New Haven, Connecticut. I am also a Branford resident. And I'm here representing the Lanphiers Cove Association. The Lanphiers Cove Association is directly adjacent to Sunrise Cove. It's slightly to the north of Sunrise Cove, and it's approximately twice the size of Sunrise Cove. There are 84 units that are located at Lanphiers Cove. Lanphiers Cove has a slightly different history from that of Sunrise. Until approximately about a year or so ago, Sunrise Cove was subject to a ground lease. There was a fee owner, and the association leased the real estate from the fee owner under a time period lease. And Lanphiers Cove has just recently acquired its fee interest in the property. It's also slightly different from Sunrise Cove in that it is bisected partially by Lanphiers Cove Road, which extends from Double Beach Road all the way down to the water and bisects several of its units off onto one side. Generally speaking, we are supportive of Sunrise Cove's initiation to attempt to make our uses conforming uses. Like Sunrise Cove, Lanphiers Cove is a multi-unit development. Unlike Sunrise Cove, Lanphiers Cove's internal regulations and bylaws do limit its use to only seasonal use from April 1st, I believe, through November 1st. And I can be corrected on that in terms of the specific dates, but it's basically the summer months. They are presently unable to provide year-round use to their residents due to the lack of water during the winter season. Lanphiers Cove is actually home to the area pump station for the sewers. Lanphiers Cove has provided that area. There's no formal easement. There was no compensation to Lanphiers Cove, and that pump station services all of Sunrise Cove as well as a good portion of Lanphiers Cove and provides public sewers to the area. Our proposed language does differ slightly from Mr. Burrito's language. We attempted to try to keep the use spirit there as was previously drafted. We thought the language could be a little bit clearer there, so we attempted to clarify just some of the language there. We were unclear, though, as to exactly how the R2 regulations would apply in a multi-unit district. And obviously, we can all kind of conceptualize what it's going to look like around the boundaries in terms of sidelines and setback requirements. But we thought that providing some clarifying bulk regulations, particularly as to the individual units, would be important. Mr. O'Connor did touch on height, and we did make a comment with respect to the height. There is a common boundary, as I mentioned, between Lanphiers Cove and Sunrise Cove. The Lanphier Cove cottages are small. They're all single story units by regulation, and they're approximately 14 feet by 34 feet in size. They can't be any bigger than that. And so in essence, they're about the size of a mobile home, a single wide mobile home, if you were to conceptualize that. And the concern with respect to height was that along the adjacent property line, where there are a number of Lanphier Cove units as well as Sunrise Cove units, to be able to build to a 35-foot height would be imposing on Lanphiers Cove. And so what we suggested in our proposed language, which does vary slightly from the R2 zoning regulations, is to limit that height to 25 feet at the 10-foot setback line, and then increasing that to 35 feet should the setback line be increased to 25 feet. We did, in taking a second look at this evening in terms of that line, we did indicate it as a sideline, and it may actually be the rear line that we are talking about. So that may need to be adjusted in our proposal. I think the common line between Lanphiers Cove and Sunrise Cove may actually be the rear line, even though they are adjacent properties there, just given the location of where the roads are. Other than that, we thought that would also be appropriate to have some limit on the size of the actual individual units themselves. I don't think certainly our building regulations, and I know Sunrise Cove's building regulations do limit those individual sizes. But the thought was that by having that codified in the regulations, it would inure to the benefit of both associations. We do agree that the association should be permitted, and we do support the year-round occupancy component, and provided there's obviously adequate water and sewer, which for Branford Cove presently there isn't. And then lastly, because a development like this initially would have been subject to probably some sort of site plan review, we thought that it would be appropriate that if there's going to be an expansion or relocation of an existing unit, that there be returned to planning and zoning for a site plan review to ensure that the development is appropriate internally. We didn't want to get down too much in the weeds in terms of internal road structures and things like that. That really summarizes our comments. Again, we are here. We're supportive of the Sunrise Cove initiative. We have had extensive discussions with Sunrise Cove. We initially thought that they might not be proceeding forward this evening with their application. So we didn't provide them very specific comments until just several days ago when we realized that this was actually going to be going forward for a hearing, and certainly hope to have a continuing discussion on any specific language, but are supportive generally of being able to establish the uses as the multifamily uses as permitted uses within the state. I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Chuck, I actually had one question for Peter.
Sure.
Peter, could you clarify item number 4? The parcel shall be owned by a single person or entity or be held pursuant to Connecticut's Common Interest Ownership Act. Could you just clarify what exactly you guys were looking for with this item, and maybe a little bit of reason why?
Certainly, it really does tails into what is actually happening in both situations. Both Branford Cove Association, the real estate is owned by its corporation, and it's the same thing as in with respect to Sunrise. And having that single ownership will allow for the internal controls to remain.
Thank you.
Chuck Anderson, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Verdun. Let's go back then to see if there are any questions from commission members before we open it up to the public, either of the applicant or of staff. Are there any questions from members of the commission at this time before we open up to the public?
Chuck.
Fred.
Russo, I have a question. I'd like to ask Mr. O'Connor. He seems to be the person who's got the greatest knowledge of the area. You're just going to have to educate me on this one, but I'm just curious. There are a long time. Has that happened at all, or could it happen today that someone comes in and buys is an existing property owner and their neighbor wants to sell theirs, and that existing property owner buys his next door neighbor and now has a double lot and can build a house much bigger in size than everybody else and might still meet the regulation because of the size of the increased lot? Is that something that's happened?
No, and it can't happen. There are 35 separate units. We have had double owners in the past. I think at this time there's only one that owns 2 units. We've had as many as 3, but they've done it for reasons of family, and they are totally separate units. The land is owned. We all share the land. You don't own a lot in Sunrise Cove. So, for example, if someone wants to come over and sit On the deck in front of our house, they technically can't. You know, most people are very respectful, but we all own the land together, and there are no restrictions on where someone can walk or where someone can go. It's just one piece of land, and there are no separate 35 lots.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Okay.
Chuck Andrews, Chair, thank you, Fred. Question for Mr. Perito, or maybe the history. I think you mentioned that there's, I think the breakdown was 17 winterized, or maybe it was 18, and the rest were unwinterized, and that there had been a number of variances, and probably more variances and special exceptions. I know you need the coastal probably, but I'm just curious as to, have there been any appeals of variances, or what type of variances have been going? It seems like absent a PDD in place, you would need a variance to do much of anything. And how has that progressed? Is it normally approved, or what's happened?
Well, let's see. Let me go back through some of that. I know Mr. O'Connor had a lot of that information, but when the 5 years had lapsed on the special development PDD, which would have been 5 years from about 1997 or so, that's when they started to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals to, one, expand to go up, because that would have been an expansion of a non-conforming use. And if they changed the footprint at all, which, if you recall, we were talking about, was that, under the original plan, you could make each footprint about 684, 664 feet, within that box. So anytime you did that, you'd have to go in and get that approval. So I think, John, you could probably answer how many people got variances in that 20-year period.
Of the 12 full-sized homes, 7 of them built under the special development district. So only 5 have built since. When the special development district expired, we were told at first by the town that we would only have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. And I'm not sure how many of the people did that first before somewhere along the line things got changed and we had to go also to planning and zoning. There are 12 that are built to full size. There are 3 other buildings that have a second story on top of the original cottage. And then there are, I think, 7 others that have moved out to the full 684 square feet, but have remained 1 story. So over half of our units have done something over the last 23 years since, or 25 years since the special development district came in. Many of them were done during the special development district time. And quite honestly, some people have just backed away from doing it because they saw all that they had to go through. And it's been too bad that they haven't been motivated enough to go ahead and follow through all the processes. So again, I think it's important that we make it as easy as possible for people.
And again, this is Jim Perito responding to the chair. And as you know, the case law on the granting of variances over these many years has gotten increasingly stringent in terms of what's the standard. So, while there might not have been, an actual court appeal, the difficulty in getting that, especially if there's any opposition, has grown.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Perito. Are there other questions or comments from commission members before we open up the public?
Just one, Joe Chadwick speaking. With the problem of sea level rise and the need to elevate the structures, has that height differential, or at least some method of indexing the height, been considered in the regulations so that we don't end up falling into a situation where the practical necessity of having to alter the first floor elevation of a building turns into an administrative approval or a public process approval or something more complicated. Because if the goal is to harmonize standards and make things easier, some recognition of the fact that some of these buildings may have to be raised, and how we're measuring the top of the building, what we're measuring it from, should be contemplated now and have some method of happening in the language. And obviously this would have some implication where if you're raising somebody's house in front of someone else's house, there's going to be a whole internal problem, but that's really not within the scope of the regulations. The regulations should just somehow contemplate it and approve a functional raising of a house for a coastal issue, a sea level rise issue.
Mr. Chairman, Harry Smith, Town Planner. Yeah, I get a partial answer, Joe. I think there is a section in the regulations under 8.1D that allows any non-conforming structure is not fully in compliance with the FEMA regulations or other federal state regulations dealing with flood hazards or flood damage prevention to be raised or otherwise modified only to the extent necessary to achieve compliance with those regulations, provided the height of the modified structure does not exceed the maximum allowed in the district. So I think that would allow, let's say you commission goes ahead and you include some provision for reduced height adjacent to the property line of the whole development. And at the water where that line is, there's a structure that needs to go up to 35, comply with the FEMA regulations. That would allow it to do that, as far as I read that regulation, irrespective of whatever limits put on this particular. But it would only be those properties that need to comply. So you're just talking about those handful right along the shore. So we do have a provision. I mean, I don't know if it goes as far as you're thinking, but it would cover the situation where part of the building is in a setback and it needs to be raised up. And it's usually that could only happen with a variance. It would allow it to happen without a variance.
Chuck Anderson here. Thank you for clarifying that, Harry. Yeah. Are there other questions, comments from commission members before we open it up? Let's open it up for public comment. Evan, again, can review once again how public can participate.
Sure. Down at the bottom of your screen, we have a reactions button. Once you select that, there's the option to raise your hand. Please use this function if you'd like to participate. You can also indicate in the chat that you would like to speak. Or I will check everyone's camera if you can't pin those two down.
And Chuck Anderson, Chair. Evan, I'll let you go ahead and recognize who is asking to speak.
I do not see anyone at this time.
Okay. Does any member of the public wish to comment? We'll do that. Okay. Okay, Chuck Anderson, I understand. And so it doesn't appear, we did hear some comment, obviously, from the attorney representing Lanfear's Cove Association. And I understand that we are, staff has requested a continuation to review those comments further. Mr. Perito, do you have any comments you'd like to make at this time? Understanding, again, we're likely to continue the meeting.
Jim Perito, again, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to, and since you're as I understand, you're keeping the hearing open, I will respond on behalf of Sunrise to the suggested changes. As Mr. Boudin said, it just came a couple of days ago, and I'd like to, sit down with our existing site plans and look to see how those impact Sunrise Cove, because we're different than they are. And I would comment on that and get that into staff before the next meeting.
Chuck Anderson, thank you, Mr. Perito. Any further comments from commission members or staff for the applicant? Again, we are going to continue this one. Anyone want anything further at this time? If not, then we will continue this item number 1 to our next regularly scheduled meeting, which is also a Zoom meeting. And Harry, when is that? That is July what?
July 21st.
Okay, so we're going to continue this public hearing to our regular Zoom meeting on July 21st. So thank you, Mr. Perito and O'Connor. So with that then, we will move on to the second item on our agenda, which is 33 West Avenue LLC, care of Robert Regal, applicant and owner, 33 West End Avenue, a special exception modification for a two-family home. And again, I believe we had opened this at our last meeting, and there are some questions about a road abandonment and a few details. Is the applicant ready to proceed on that one?
Good evening, folks. Jim Preddy, Criscola Engineering. I wasn't at the last meeting. Someone else from my office was here because I was booked otherwise. My understanding, there was a couple of comments from the last meeting. One was an updated landscaping plan, which we did provide to Evan, which addressed street trees and plantings around the new building. And I can put that up if you're interested. The other question was the abandonment of a couple pieces of paper roads that were, abandoned by the town when the railroad was put in the 1850s. And there seems to be some paperwork that's elusive, or maybe the ball got dropped at the RTM level, but best I could determine is that the Board of Selectmen in 2014 had approved the disposition of it, and then it went to the RTM and got kind of kicked down the road a little bit, and then the trail kind of went cold. So we need to have the town attorney probably look into that. And that was just from going through meeting minutes, and it just sort of disappeared. But what I can share with you is, let me see. So this is the survey of the property, and the warranty deed actually includes up to here. This larger piece of what was, I think, Swift Street at one point, and then down along here. So I think the two pieces in question are the part of Reynolds Lane, and then this other little piece up here that we show on our map. I did find as far back as, hold on, as far back as, this is a 2002 map that shows this is the same distance on West End Avenue, that this had already been mapped. So that part of here, and this matches what the warranty deed says. So that part up here had already been part of the property as far back as 2002, and maybe farther than that. And it was the other little piece up here, and again, part of Reynolds Lane that was in question. Regardless of that, when we did this, layout, and even the future layout, we didn't include that piece here, or the Reynolds Lane piece.
Oh, okay.
Where that's the landscaping plan. We go back to the site plan. So we honored the 10-foot separating distance on this site because as the residents in this zone, the commercial pieces have a 0 setback. So that's why they were tucked up against the property lines and back here. But again, we didn't include that in the, as far as using that property in the layout. Back in the plan that was approved in 2014, that part wasn't used. So there definitely needs to be some cleaning up of land records, but I don't think it actually affects one way or the other what we're doing here. And as far as the landscaping plan, we did add a plant list with plantings around the building here. This had already been planted around this building. That was done a couple of years ago. We are showing the street trees that have yet to be planted, and then a couple other trees at the other side of the entrance over here. And that's it. Again, this two-family home that we're trying to get approved now was always part of the future phases plan. It's just that, I mean, here's phase two. We're into phase two. It's just the demand for the residents has been higher than the demand for the garages. So it's kind of, we're taking the phases slightly out of order, but they could still, when, you know, demand arises, they could still be constructed.
Chuck Anderson, thank you, Mr. Preddy. Evan, did you want to review? I think you did the staff review on this one. Did you have any comments on the changes from Mr. Preddy?
Yeah, I think Mr. Preddy just showed us the landscaping plan that they had submitted and that was circulated to the commission members. I believe that and the issue of the abandonment were the only issues at the last meeting. I apologize, I wasn't there. We still recommend all the conditions that we proposed at that last meeting. However, we have added something related to the Swift Street abandonment. I looked through as many resources as I could around town hall to try to find if that abandonment had been finalized. It looks like it was approved by the Board of Selectmen, like Mr. Preddy said, but I'm not sure if it ever was completed. We now are adding one condition. This condition would say the applicant shall demonstrate that the abandonment of the portion of the property that was once Swift Lane has been finalized by the town of Branford to be a part of the property at 33 West End Ave, or the applicant shall revise the plan to have the parking spaces in another location on the property to be approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Chuck Anderson, thank you, Evan. Any questions, comments from commission members or staff before we open up to the public?
I'll wait. I'll defer to Sharon.
Oh, okay. Sharon Hutner here. I'm looking at the landscaping plan, and I'm noticing that most of the suggested plants are not native, not even to North America. They're mostly native to Asia. And we're trying very hard in Branford to plant as much native plants as possible. So I would like to suggest that the landscaping be looked at again, and hopefully more native plantings can be suggested. Thank you.
Chuck Anderson, thank you, Sharon. Harry, did you have a comment?
Harry Smith, town planner. I did. You know, Evan's last proposed condition was based on a discussion we had here in-house without the benefit of the information you just provided, Mr. Preddy, that documents that where you're proposing parking is part of the land area that's covered by a warranty deed. I mean, we were just still concerned, though, that maybe you could comment as a surveyor that there may be some right to pass and repass on Swift Street that might interfere with the use of those parking spaces, absent an abandonment of Swift Street being completed. That was our concern.
Yeah, I don't, again, Jim Preddy, there wasn't any remaining rights other than that we knew of, that we found, other than there is still a piece of a water main that seems a dead end at the railroad property. So that would probably have to be removed by the water company, depending on where the end of it is. But other than the water line, there wasn't any other rights that we had found.
Okay, I mean, it's possible, I suppose, since it's at some point was a, you know, some kind of designated road that as a paper street, there may be some residual right. Absent doing some research and contacting a town council about it. I mean, is that a problem for the applicant to I know you're talking about, again, the RTM and waiting for that process to work out. If we made a contingent on, or, didn't need to be done until the point of issuance of a certificate of occupancy, would that present a problem for your client or not?
No, I don't think so. Jim Preddy again. I don't think so. In fact, Mr. Regal and I spoke about, contacting the town attorney and figuring out how we could get this sorted out, because it looked like somebody had gone 90% of the way, and then it died. And so unfortunately, I wasn't personally involved at the time, so I'm not sure how it got sort of dropped, but looks like they were close at the time. So.
Okay. All right. So if the wording stood as is proposed, that should not become problematic, as long as it's understood that condition would not have to be complied with until the time of a certificate of occupancy is sought, or the zoning authorization for a CO.
Fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Chuck Chair, thank you, Harry. Any further comments before we open up to the public? If not, then let's open up to the public. Any member of the public wish to comment? Evan, you see anyone?
I do not see anyone at this time.
Okay, one more time. Any member of the public wish to comment? Evan, I assume no one has jumped in, correct?
Nope.
Okay, so then we can close the public portion. Then in terms of the applicant's response, Mr. Preddy, you heard Ms. Hutner's concern about the non-native plantings.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I will, Jim Preddy again, I will revisit it with the landscape architect. Quite honestly, we used what had been approved on the first landscape plan. So it was just a continuation, but we can certainly change them if the commission feels that's appropriate.
Well, I apologize that I was not as efficient as I should have been on the first go around, but
I meant 2014.
the birch tree is fine. It's all of the other ones that are Asian. So we would appreciate it in Branford. Help our wildlife.
Not a problem.
I mean, I saw rhododendrons. Those are native, right?
No, actually, and it's so interesting because rhododendron is like our state flower, but this particular rhododendron is Korean. So it's
okay. Interesting. Okay. I just saw rhododendron with that. Oh.
I know. That's what I thought too, but then I looked it up.
Okay. Okay. Harry, is that something we could fiddle with in a condition or what?
Yeah, I think we simply have a condition that said the landscape plan shall be revised to incorporate native plants to the satisfaction of zoning enforcement officer. Is that sufficient? So if there's some reason why it can't all be native, it still leaves a little wiggle room, but it's understood to try to have native plants for all of it.
Yeah, should we make it the town planner versus the zoning enforcement officer? Or
we can do that, sure.
And then Sharon, you show it to Sharon. I mean, that's what I'm saying.
Happy to do that.
Okay.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay.
Okay. Then anything else, Mr. Preddy?
No, that's it. Thank you. Harry, you must need extra stuff to do.
Always looking for extra things.
That's right. You get too much time in here.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, it's good. Then we'll close this matter as a public hearing. This is hopefully something we can take up in a little bit. It brings in item number 3. Branch applicant Joe Morosi is care of JM Properties LLC owner, 808-873, a special exception for a Taekwondo studio at 803-873 West Main Street, which is where the Five Guys is located. So is the applicant ready on that one?
Yes.
Okay, tell us what you're proposing.
All right. Good evening, everybody. I want to thank you guys for having me. My name is Dante Branch on behalf of Northeast Taekwondo. I am interested in starting a Taekwondo school in the Branford area. I'm aware there's other martial arts schools there, but I would like to implement my own school, my own tradition. I'm originally from Washington, D.C. The school Northeast Taekwondo was originated in Washington, D.C. by my instructor. And I was recently given permission to open my own school under the same branding and philosophy. And I'm aware that the space that I'm using was originally a retail space. And I'm just proposing to transfer that into a recreation space. Short and sweet.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Branch. Evan, did you prepare the staff report on this one?
I did. Can you guys see my screen with the site plan?
Yes.
Okay. Like Mr. Branch stated, they are proposing to start a Taekwondo school. This falls under the indoor recreation use and therefore requires a special exception approval in the BL district. They meet the bulk requirements of the BL district, and they do not propose any exterior changes. Therefore, they have not supplied a lighting or landscaping plan. And the indoor recreation use is not included in our off-street parking table. However, in the past, the commission has established a requirement of one space per 175 square feet. Per the applicant, the space they plan to occupy is around 2,000 square feet. I think there would be about 12 spaces required, and the property has about 126 spaces. Therefore, being that there's multiple businesses sharing this one parking lot, past approvals have indicated that the parking has been adequate for commercial needs of the previous tenants, and staff feels that this will continue to be the case with this new proposal. No earth disturbance is proposed, and based on the application materials, it appears that the special exception criteria are satisfied. Staff recommends the following finding, that the commission finds based on the application materials and testimony that the special exception criteria are satisfied. And we have two conditions, the first of which is prior to the issuance of a certificate of zoning compliance or certificate of occupancy, confirmation in writing that no change to the existing lighting will be provided, and confirmation that the existing parking spaces are adequate with the collection of uses on that property. And our final condition is that all conditions of the previous approval shall remain in full force and effect.
Okay, understood. Thank you, Evan. Questions, comments from any commission members or staff before we open up the public? Hearing none, then let's open up the public. Does any member of the public wish to comment? Evan, do you see anyone who would like to comment on this one?
I do not. And just to reiterate, if you'd like to comment, the reactions button at the bottom of your screen, followed by the raise your hand option. I do not see anyone at this time.
Okay, so no public comment. Mr. Branch, do you have anything else you'd like to add, or at this time?
Not at the moment. Just thank you guys for having me. I look forward to working with the town of Branford in the future.
We're very excited. I think didn't we approve a fencing place a little while ago? And so we're gonna get you covered. So any other comments from commission members or staff? Hearing none, then we'll close this matter as a public hearing. Again, this is something I think we can probably take up in a little bit. That brings us then to item number 4, which is Jordan Flowers, applicant, Robert Lundgren, owner, 207 East Main Street. This is a special exception in coastal site plan for a food truck plant. Is the applicant ready to proceed with that one?
Yes, good evening, Jim Preddy again, Chris Golo Engineering, representing Jordan Flowers. I'm going to share my screen. So the property is 257 East Main Street, is next to Express Tire. On this side, here's East Main Street, and on this side, I believe, is Attorney Florentine's office. And then the Branford River kind of meanders through the back and up up here, there's a bridge. What Mr. Flowers would like to do is build what we're calling a food truck park, a small parking area in the front of the lot, a decorative stone area that has a couple spaces for a food truck, different food trucks. Right now, he owns a taco truck, and that will be one of them. He's in the plans of buying, say, an ice cream truck and then something else. The little building that we're proposing here is for food prep only in storage and bathroom. So there won't be any cooking done in the building, just be, cutting of onions and that sort of thing, and storage, cold storage of food, but no actual cooking in the building at this time. The seating area would be picnic area here. What we have is a future, what he wants to do is a 2-story pavilion at some point in the future, where most of the tables would be moved up to the second floor area, and the space underneath would be left open for games such as cornhole or that sort of thing, yard game kind of thing. And then there would be a little bit of dining area left on the ground floor for accessible use. So the parking count, as I described to Evan, was based on, the total, the 870 square foot second floor plus about 250 square feet of the first floor. Again, that's the future condition. So in initial condition, we're a little bit over parked by a few cars, but not necessarily a bad thing. There is an existing brush line that goes along here, and we're going to be cutting into a little bit, but it's not very much, just to kind of make this work. We do provide underground mortar storage system for the new pavement and the roof area of the food storage building and the proposed future pavilion roof area. The designer, Michael Lawrence Studios, have provided a landscaping plan, and with the updated,
let's just move it out.
With the updated plan, there is a plant schedule on one of the pages that was included. And the other question I came up with, our typical, there's going to be 2 lights in the parking lot. Everything else will be more or less like string lights, low level lights kind of thing, all, less than 100 watt type of things for the sitting area. But the parking lot lights, obviously, we need to have just for safety and access, something a little more robust. And this is a light that's been used quite a bit in Branford, this Guardco light. We could get it at 3000 Kelvin, full cutoff, fixed arm. So that's what we're proposing for the parking lot area. We did already get WPCA approval to connect this building to the sewer that's available on the shoulder of East Main Street, with the caveat that, they get all the appropriate building permits. This is in a flood zone, so this building will have to be flood proofed. And Mr. Flowers is also on, I saw on the Zoom, if there was any questions about the business and running of things, if you guys are interested in that sort of stuff.
Chuck Candace, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Preddy. Evan, did you do the staff report on this one?
I did. As Mr. Preddy stated, the applicant is proposing for multiple taco trucks with one permanent structure. They meet the bulk requirements of the BR district as well as the access management district. They had supplied a landscaping plan to us early this week, or maybe last week they had submitted that to us. I believe they satisfy the front side and rear landscaping requirements with the proposed plantings along with the existing vegetation. I do think, however, that they will still need the proposed finding using section 63L2 for modification of the landscaping requirements to allow the preparation of a landscaping plan by an architect as opposed to a landscape architect. Mr. Peretti also clarified the amount of restaurant space that will be used. I believe the requirement is 12 spaces based on that square footage that he gave us. Was it 800 square feet?
Jim Preddy again, that area under the pavilion is 870.
Okay. I believe that would require 12 spaces and they are proposing 15 spaces. Therefore, they satisfy the off-street parking requirements. They did not originally submit a lighting plan, but Mr. Peretti just went over the lighting information. And we have also made a condition of approval that would require all lighting to be compliant with section 6.7. The applicant has not included a soil erosion and sediment control plan. However, they do indicate that erosion control measures shall be included around the area of activity. And I think Mr. Peretti also touched upon the fact that the plan were submitted to the town engineer. They informed us that the permanent structure is actually in the flood zone. However, a condition has been added that would be allowed for minor site plan changes that are explicitly for the purpose of becoming compliant with the floodplain management ordinance or chapter 161 of the town of Branford code to be allowed to be approved by the zoning enforcement officer. Finally, based on the application materials, it appears that the special exception criteria are generally satisfied. They are also in compliance with the coastal site plan standards of section 9.7. Staff recommends the following findings. The commission finds that the applicant is consistent with the special exception criteria of section 9.8F. Finding number 2, the coastal site plan is consistent with the goals and policies of the Coastal Area Management Act and incorporates conditions and modifications necessary to mitigate adverse impacts on coastal resources. Finding number 3, the commission finds that the applicant has demonstrated excellence in landscape design per section 6.3L2 and allows preparation of the landscaping plan by a registered architect instead of a landscape architect. Staff recommends the following conditions. Condition number 1, prior to the issuance of a zoning permit or building permit, the following shall be met to the satisfaction of the town planner or his designee. Prior to the start of construction, erosion control measures shall be installed to the satisfaction of the zoning enforcement officer. And condition number 2, all lighting shall be compliant with section 6.7. And finally, condition number 3, any alteration to the site plan explicitly made for the purpose of being in compliance with chapter 161 floodplain management of the town of Branford code shall be submitted and reviewed to the satisfaction of the zoning enforcement officer.
Chuck Anderson here. Thank you, Evan. Harry, did you have something?
Harry Smith, town planner, just sort of jumping to the chase here. So I'm assuming Ms. Hutner may mention native landscaping plants again. So might I suggest and see if Mr. Peretti and Mr. Flowers would be amenable to a condition that we discussed for last application, which would read as follows. The landscaping plan shall be revised to use native planting satisfaction of the town planner. And I am not sure if the landscaping plan has got a planting schedule. So we'd certainly want to.
It's on L501 of the
Okay.
Michael Lawrence set.
I'm not sure I've got that sheet. I think we've got L102, the softscape plan. At any rate, that could be part of the submission. So is that something to be amenable?
Yes.
Okay.
Great. Chuck Anderson here. Thank you, Harry. Question for Mr. Flowers. Concept, food park? I guess there's 3 trucks that are proposed. Is this something you have experience with, or what's your background and experience with this?
Short answer is yes. So I currently own a food truck. The name is Tacos Flores. So it's a taco truck based out of Guilford. I'm fully permitted to operate in several jurisdictions, including Branford. So we've done events all over Connecticut, including Guilford, Branford, etc. So yes, I have experience with this, and the concept really. My idea is to bring the novelty of the food truck experience just to a physical location, and that allows me to do multiple things with the business, as well as have to go other places, to have a central headquarters. And then my idea is to basically have a minimum viable product for the buildings, which is why the building is small, because I can already do all the cooking on the trucks and I'm permitted to do so. So that really helps me a lot in terms of, the economics of having to build a structure. I can have it only be, a food prep and storage kitchen. And so it becomes, compelling economically. And I think it's something that in this form could be a great business. And, the offerings, I think, would really add a lot to the community. And I think that, I think they have already, and I'm excited to make that more of a permanent feature.
Chuck and Sure, thank you. Do you see this as a seasonal sort of thing, or is it? I mean, it doesn't have to be, but I would think the outdoor seating would be more, when the weathers are warmer. But
yeah, it's a great question, because certainly the food truck business has a great degree of seasonality to it, and probably 80% of the business that I do is done between May and September. But what I've noticed is that there is demand for these things. And if I had a physical structure like this, what that allows me to do is get more utilization capacity out of the asset, because what I can do is I can list on, my own website or a third-party website for takeout. So in the current construction with the parking spaces, it would be I think of it as like a temporary outdoor space, but like a year-round offering. So that way in the winter, if somebody wants tacos, they can stop by the truck and we can be operating, and they can take out from us. They certainly wouldn't want to sit outside in the cold, neither would I. But that would be the goal, is to have a year-round offering. But in terms of seating and outdoor area, I would not expect that would be seasonal. And the structure that we would, if it were initially like a tent structure, clearly that would be temporary.
Certainly. Chuck Anderson, thank you, Mr. Flowers. Questions, comments from commission members before we open it up to the public? Sharon.
I actually have a suggestion for some of those extra parking spots. You're located in an economic justice zone. And right now, the incentives for electric car charging stations is very, 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 very generous, especially in those kinds of zones. So I would encourage you, as maybe a business advantage, to also advertise that you have an EV charging station in your parking lot. And if you want the information, all you have to do is go online to Eversource, and they have all the information that you would need about how to go about accessing those funds. I mean, I'm talking about like $20,000 to $40,000 in terms of incentives. Wow. So we're not talking about a little bit of money. It's there. So
thank you so much for that recommendation. And it actually is on point for what I would like to do. I would at some point like to install solar panels on the building, so that I am like self-sufficient. Number one. Number two, self-sufficient from an energy perspective. So I don't really have to draw and ideally can be, net positive and, actually earn money from using energy.
Yes.
I also am, my wife and I, if the global supply chain ever gets its act together, have 2 EVs on delivery. And I actually have one of the electric trucks on delivery precisely for this reason. Gas prices out of control, and an EV is actually a really creative way to operate one of these businesses, because you can have a trailer that is all electric and it can be operated with the battery on the EV. So, suffice it to say, thank you very much for that recommendation. I would love to do something like that. I'll consult with Jim about any incremental, permits and design changes that would be required for that. I would love to do that.
Yeah, the environment appreciates it.
Yes.
Thank
certainly.
Great. Thank you, Harry.
We probably throw in some kind of condition allowing the site plan to be modified as necessary to accommodate installation of EV charging stations. That'll prevent you from having to come in for a minor modification application to add it in the future. And you can certainly start out with conduit at least when you're doing the parking lot install, if nothing else.
At that point, it just needs to be part of the electrical permit, I believe.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Great. Thank you. Any other comments from commission members? If not, then let's open it up to the public. Any member of the public wish to comment? Evan, you see anyone?
Not see anyone at this time.
Okay. Are there any further comments from the applicant or the commission members or staff?
Jim Preddy again. No, unless Jordan has anything else to add, I think we've covered it.
Agreed.
Okay. Okay, great. I think this is probably something we can take up in a little bit then. We'll close this matter as a public hearing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that then brings us into our minutes. We had 2 sets of minutes, one from April 21 that had to be reviewed and corrected. And Harry, I think those were distributed to us. Is that correct?
Harry Smith, Town Planner. Yes, they were.
Okay, so let's start with that. Does someone want to make a motion to approve the minutes of our April 21 meeting that were submitted to us?
I'll make the motion. Fred Russo, so moved.
Motion made by Fred. Is there a second?
Sharon Hutner seconds.
Sharon seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Joe Vayuza, are you in favor?
Joe Vayuso in favor.
Joe Chadwick?
Chadwick in favor.
Fred Russo?
Fred Russo in favor.
Sharon Hutner?
Sharon Hutner in favor.
And chair is also in favor of approving the April minutes. So next one that was sent out was our last meeting of June 16th. Someone want to make a motion to approve the June 16th meeting minutes if you found them to be appropriate? Who wants to make that?
I'll make that motion. Fred Russo.
Fred makes the motion. Is there a second?
Joe Vayuso seconds.
Joe Vayuso seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Joe Vayuso, are you in favor?
Joe Vayuso in favor.
Joe Chadwick?
Chadwick in favor.
Fred Russo? Fred, you're in favor of approval?
Fred Russo in favor.
Yes. Sharon Hutner?
Sharon
Yes.
Hutner is in favor.
And chair's also in favor. So those minutes are approved. So let's go back then to the public hearing applications that I think that we may be able to act on. The first was item number 2, 33 West Avenue, West End Avenue, the special exception modification for the 2-family home. Mr. Pretty had presented that, and Evan, we had gone through that. There was, I think, a tweak on the landscaping, and then some other things. So, Evan, do you want to bring up that resolution?
Yes. Sorry. Sorry for the delay.
By the way, is this is a resolution of approval. If every, just sort of general discussion, do we agree that this, appears to be in conformance with the regulations and the conditions, the concerns that we would have? I don't know if anyone has any other thoughts. There was no opposition from the public. Appears to comply with the regulations. So, but you want to run through this, Evan?
Sure. Just to clarify, this is 33 West End Avenue, correct?
Correct.
Okay. We have one finding, subject to the compliance with the conditions listed below. The commission finds, based on the testimony and application materials presented, that the proposed use of the property is consistent with the special exception criteria. Staff recommends the following conditions. Number one, prior to the issuance of a certificate of zoning compliance or the zoning issuance of a certificate of occupancy, the following shall be addressed to the satisfaction of the zoning enforcement officer. The trees and other plantings in the site triangles shall be positioned and maintained so as to not limit or obstruct vision of motorists. Prior to the start of construction, erosion control measures shall be installed. Condition number two, prior to the issuance of a zoning permit or the zoning authorization for a building permit, the following shall be addressed to the satisfaction of the town planner. All lighting shall be in compliance with section 6.7, and the applicant shall update the planting list to include as many native species as possible. Condition number three, prior to the issuance of a certificate of zoning compliance or the zoning authorization of the zoning authorization of an issuance of a certificate of occupancy, the applicant shall demonstrate that the abandonment of the portion of the property that was once Swift Lane has been finalized by the town of Branford to be a part of the property at 33 West End Avenue, or revise the plan to have the parking spaces in another location on the property. And I will remove this last part. Sorry about that. There you go.
Okay, thank you, Evan. Any questions, or were there any other tweaks or anything that we needed to do, Harry or Evan?
Harry Smith, town planner. Evan, let's just look at the landscaping again, the natives. Where is that?
That's B, 2B, I think, right?
Okay, yeah, just if you add that to the satisfaction of the town planner, I believe I was tasked with that.
Sure.
Right.
It's the consensus, so just.
And that would allow, you can run it by Sharon.
Exactly, right.
Okay.
Right.
And I would suggest 1B, if you scroll back up to that, we may want to make that, since that should happen prior to, well before a CO is contemplated, maybe make that number 4. Just pull that out.
Sure.
This is great. I mean, the ability to do this is, I haven't had this before. This is great.
Okay.
All right.
Any other suggested tweaks by staff? Or the commission? Any other commission members have any suggested tweaks? If not, then does someone want to make a motion to approve the application in accordance with the revised staff report that we just saw on the screen that included those revisions, those tweaks that we just talked about?
Sharon Hutner so moves.
Motion made by Sharon. Is there a second?
Chadwick seconds.
Second by Joe Chadwick. Any further discussion? Joe Vayuso?
Joe Vayuso approves.
Joe Chadwick?
Chadwick is in favor.
Fred Russo?
Fred Russo's in favor.
Sharon Hutner?
Sharon Hutner is in favor.
And chair is also in favor. So that application is approved. That brings us to item number 3, Dante Branch. This is the special exception for the Taekwondo studio. And can you pull that one up, Evan?
Yes, staff recommends one finding. The commission finds, based on the application materials presented, that the use of the property is consistent with the special exception criteria. And we have 2 conditions prior to the issuance of a certificate of zoning compliance or a certificate of occupancy. The following shall be addressed to the satisfaction of the town planner or his designee. Confirmation in writing that no changes to the existing exterior lighting is proposed, and confirmation that the existing parking spaces are adequate for all combined uses on this property. And all conditions of the previous approval shall remain in full force and effect as they may still apply.
Thank you, Evan. And again, this is an application. It was simple change of use. I guess it was formerly retail to this use. Then they had adequate parking and to allow this new tenant to bring Taekwondo studio to Branford here. So is anyone, unless anyone has any comments, does someone want to make a motion to approve this application in accordance with the findings and conditions in the staff report as reviewed by Evan?
Chadwick will make that motion.
Joe Chadwick makes that motion to approve. And is there a second?
Joe Vayuso seconds.
Fred Russo makes a second. Okay, Joe, you take it.
Okay, second by Joe Vayuso. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Joe Vayuso, are you in favor?
Vayuso in favor.
Joe Chadwick.
Chadwick is in favor.
Fred Russo.
Fred Russo is in favor.
Sharon Hutner.
Sharon Hutner is in favor.
And the chair is also in favor. Then that brings us into item number 4, which is the food truck park. 257 East Main, Jordan Flowers applicant, and special exception to the food truck park. And you've got the staff, the recommendations and findings. I know you went over that with us, Evan. And were there any tweaks on this? Like, I know the the two things that came up. One was the native planning, and if we need to say something about that. And the second was the, do we need to do anything about the conduits, or is that already, I think, Harry, you mentioned minor, should be allowed as a minor site plan modification or something. Do we need to do anything, or what do you think?
Harry Smith, town planner. I mean, the actual EV charging pedestals themselves, we could just put in something. I would suggest 2 things. Actually, one is a 1C. So that would read, the landscaping plan shall be revised to use native plantings to the satisfaction of the town planner.
For landscaping, okay. Add the word plan after landscaping, I guess.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Could you repeat?
To include native plantings to the satisfaction of the town planner. And then a number, I guess, 3 could read, the site plan may be modified as necessary to the satisfaction of the town planner to include EV charging stations.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is an additional condition? Sorry.
Oh, that's right. You had 3 in there about the floodplain. So this would be 4. Yes. I'm sorry. I don't have that on my, I was looking at my paper here. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Could you repeat it again?
Sure. It's the site plan may be modified as necessary to the satisfaction of the town planner to include EV charging stations. And we could throw in there and solar panels.
Let's fix that. All right. All right, anything else?
I don't think so. On the landscaping, where was that added? 1C?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. 1B also covered landscaping, right? Or is it?
Yeah, that was that as planting schedule.
Right. Okay.
Which I think is one of the plan sheets that we did not receive, but also.
I think we did receive it.
Okay, I didn't have it with my packet for some reason.
I have it up if you want to take a look.
We can leave it in there. I mean, if
okay.
That way we just have it, and I don't know if you took a close look at it, but.
Okay, and then the second condition is just a standard one about lighting.
Correct.
Right.
Okay. Any questions or comments from anyone? Looks like again a use that conforms. I like the fact that it's conforming to all as if they were permanent structures. So even though they're mobile, and there's the issue of whether they had to do it, they're doing it. So I think that's a good idea. It meets the bulk requirements for a permanent restaurant type of use. So, and they provide parking and so forth. So if that looks good, does someone want to make a motion to approve the application and by adopting the staff recommendations of the findings and the conditions as set forth in the staff report that's in front of us, and it's been modified to include those tweaks that are right in front of us.
Sharon Hutner so moves.
Motion made by Sharon. Is there a second?
Fred Russo, second.
Second by Fred. Any further discussion? All in favor? Joe Vayuso?
Vayuso approves.
Joe Chadwick?
Chadwick is in favor.
Fred Russo?
Fred Russo in favor.
Sharon Hutner?
Sharon Hutner is in favor.
And Chair is also in favor. So congratulations. So looking forward to some more tacos. So then I think now it brings us into old business and correspondence. What do we got for correspondence here?
Harry Smith, Town Planner. We have 1, 2, 3 fairly voluminous pieces of correspondence. The first is respect to changes to the cell installation on the smokestack of the former MIF facility at 50 Maple Street. And they are proposing swapping out. Oh, they want to add a 25 kilowatt natural gas backup generator at ground level. So I don't know if anybody's concerned about that. I don't believe the commission has jurisdiction, is my understanding over that. But I will take a look to make sure it doesn't interfere with any other feature on the property. And then we have another application to the Siting Council for removing and installing new antennas and other associated equipment for a cell tower at 10 Sylvia Street, which is right off of East Main Street. And we have a third one, which is similar swap out and changes and refits for a cell tower on 21 Acorn Road. That's it.
Thank you, Harry. Okay, so that brings us in, we can go to our old business now. And item number 1 is Blue Point Apothecary, Care Timothy Herbst, applicant, Two Dogs LLC, Mark Milano owner, 471 East Main Street. This is the actual special exception for the hybrid retailer cannabis establishment. I think at our last meeting, we approved the zoning text amendment that would authorize the use. And I think it had an effective date that pushed it out in any event. So, but now Harry wants additional time on the resolution. So Harry, do you want to review your resolution? Again, this is a special exception on the cannabis establishment.
Sure, Harry Smith, Town Planner. Let me just recap quickly. I'm going to share my screen. So we should be able to hopefully see this. This is the amendment to the regulations that was passed last meeting. Commission set an effective date of July 12th. Changed the moratorium language to eliminate hybrid cannabis establishment, hybrid retailer. Changed definitions a little bit. Added an entry in the use table, and also added a new section 720, cannabis establishments, to the regulations. So with that in place, and to become effective, I believe the commission is free to take take action on the associated special exception application. So I propose two findings. The first would say subject to compliance with the conditions listed below. The commission finds, based on testimony, application materials, et cetera, that the proposed use is consistent with the special exception criteria, as well as the additional criteria of new section 720, approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission on June 16, 2022. And also another statement here, last sentence: consistency of this application with the criteria of section 9.8 F7, respect to traffic circulation, traffic safety, is found to be at least in part based on the information contained in a traffic study, and has the title of it and the date, and its entry and exhibit number, as well as a testimony of Neil Olinsky, who is a transportation planner of SLR International Corporation. And also have a finding 2, which is subject to compliance conditions below. The commission finds that proposed use of the property is consistent with the site plan application requirements of section 9.6. During the public hearing, there was some discussion about and comments from staff about compliance with landscaping requirements. So that I think was a missing street tree on the business park drive side of the property. And I suggested, based on requirements of landscaping regulations, to be street trees added along the east Main Street side, as well as a row of low hedges or, and other planting elements to screen headlight glare from East Main Street. So those have been, this will require the development of a landscaping plan based on the existing site plan to address those comments, which were in the staff report. Just refer to the staff report here. Condition 1B would require the installation of those elements to the satisfaction of the ZO. And this is all before the certificate of occupancy is, if such a thing is required, or the use is established. And 1C would require submittal of a photometric plan, including all the proposed new lighting fixtures to replace all existing non-conforming lights. They were all listed in comment 6 in the staff report. This also require all necessary information, catalog cut sheets as necessary, and so forth, and the usual requirements on fixed non-adjustable arm mounts and correlated color temperature of less than or equal to 3000 degrees Kelvin. And 1D would require the installation and replacement of light fixtures to the satisfaction of the CO. We did receive a comment from the town engineer about looking at the drainage system, since it's been in place for a few decades now, and seeing if there's any needed maintenance, such as pumping out of the catch basin, et cetera, and having that completed. So that would also need to be done before CO is issued. And finally, conditions 2 and 3 are standard conditions. 2, about any additional signage or replacement lighting would need approval of Planning and Zoning Commission or staff, whichever is appropriate or applicable. And 3, condition requiring the maintenance of landscaping as an ongoing requirement of the approval. I did not address natives, so we could do that with a tweaking here. We can do that right now.
All right, do it.
So we could add that sentence into at the end here, as well as the addition, as well as revisions to use native landscaping, native plantings. How's that? Just that simple.
Sounds good.
Okay. That's it. Oh, it also should be effective date, I'm sorry, of the 14th of July, so that this approval takes place after the effective date of the regulation change.
Thanks, Harry. Harry, I know one of the things we added to the regulations was the hours of operation, and it's probably necessary if they have to conform to regulations, but I wouldn't. It would be maybe a decent reminder to say the hours of operation shall conform to the regulations. Okay,
I mean, we can just put that in as a number 4, the hours of operation.
Right. Yeah, we did have some discussion about that, and I thought that was maybe just emphasize that here too.
Okay, to the requirements of section 7.20.
Right.
So I'm adding a sentence in about natives on 1A. So the end of 1A, I'm adding and the use of native plantings. Okay.
Okay. Questions, comments from commission members? If there are none, then do someone want to make a motion to approve this application? Again, with the modifications we just discussed about native plantings and hours of operation conforming to the regulations. Anyone? Okay, Joe Vayuzo makes the motion. Is there a second?
Chadwick seconds.
Second by Joe Chadwick. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Joe Vayuzo, are you in favor?
Vayuzo in favor.
Joe Chadwick?
Chadwick is in favor.
Fred Russo? Fred
Russo in favor.
Yes.
I'm in
Sharon,
favor.
by the way, and just, okay, thank you, Fred. And Sharon, and I know, Sharon, you were here at all the public hearings on this one, is that
Yes,
correct?
I was.
Yes.
And Sharon Hutner is in favor.
Yes, and Chair is also in favor. Okay, so that application is approved. So then that brings then to item number 2, which is the of old business. Again, this is the Buckley Road application, and I think we've pushed that one off to our next meeting on July 21. Is that correct, Harry?
Harry Smith, Town Planner, that is correct, as well as old business item number 3.
Right, 2 and 3 are both the Buckley Road applications. And that brings us into item number 4, and that's an application, Matthew and Stephanie Milano, for 125 Thimble Island Road, a 2-lot subdivision. And Mr. Pellegrino presented that last time. I think there was quite an question about disposition of the open space, and I don't know if you've had an opportunity to take a look at that, Mr. Pellegrino.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's good to be back. Mr. Preddy is here with me as well, and the Milanos, I think, are also here. So there they are. Thank you very much. Yeah, the only question I think that was open as we completed the last meeting was the issue of open space. And we went back to the drawing board, and Jim sharpened his pencil, and we found 10% of open space on the revised plan that he'll show you in a minute that actually abuts existing town property. Evan, we've been working together, has helped make us the introduction to the first selectman's office. I don't think they've given their approval yet, because I know some of them were traveling for the weekend, but I think given the fact that it abuts town property, in all likelihood, they probably will accept it. We would obviously deed it to the town and revise that lot line accordingly. And I think that was it. And we've kept the remainder of the tidal wetland, as we discussed last week. Would give a conservation easement over that. And I'll just have Jim show you that plan in case you haven't seen it yet. All of you haven't seen it.
Jim Preddy, Crisco Engineering again. Here is the plan that we presented last week, last meeting, with the addition now of this triangular area of open space, so that the large end of the triangle actually butts the town property. And we were able to keep our frontage. This kind of grew out of the conversation at the last hearing. We were able to get the 10%. The total lot area is just shy of 84,000, and we're at, just over 8,400 square feet with the open space. And then the shaded area is the conservation easement, as Mr. Pellegrino suggested, to further protect the tidal wetland area that is on the property. And those were the only changes since the last meeting.
Chuck Anderson, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Preddy. Mr. Pellegrino, anything else?
I don't think so. I know Evan had some revisions to his report, and we've reviewed those with him, and I think we're in agreement with those, and I think that will transition us into the next phase of this development.
Chuck Anderson, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Pellegrino.
Thank you.
Evan, do you want to review your proposed findings and conditions, or with us?
Sure.
Sorry.
I will bring them up on the screen. We have two findings now. We actually removed one, but added an additional one. The first is that the coastal site plan is consistent with the Coastal Area Management Act. And the second is that the commission finds, given that the proposed open space is adjacent to existing town-owned property, the applicant shall revise the lot line so as to form a continuous open space area on one single parcel. And we have 4 conditions. The storm drainage system shall be determined at the time of the final house approval. Number 2, the final erosion and sediment control plans are to be approved by the zoning enforcement officer. And number 3, underground utilities are required. And number 4, the following items shall be addressed to the satisfaction of the town planner prior to the approval of the chairperson's signature. Evidence of the recording of a deed transferring ownership of the proposed open space to the town of Branford of form and content acceptable to the town council and the town planner, ensuring its permanent protection as open space and meeting all other requirements of section 304 of the subdivision regulations on the land records of the town clerk.
Chuck Anderson, Chair. Thank you, Evan. Any questions, comments from commission members? Again, this wasn't a public hearing. We didn't need to open up to the public, but I think that answer. I mean, the question was the open space. I know this abuts the ball field and the wetlands over there by the town, right near the Legacy Theater. I think it makes sense. That's preserves I like the conservation easement. That's additional and provides a open space to the town. I don't think, if it's reasonably probable that the town will do it, I don't think it actually has to happen, before we actually approve the application. And if for some reason didn't, we could deal with that later. So I think that issue has been addressed, or at least it looks like it has been to me. So I don't know what anyone else thinks. And if no one has any comments, if someone wants to make a motion to approve the application with the finding and conditions as just read by Evan.
Mr. Chairman, Smith Town Planner, just have one quick question about the proposed conservation easement, which is certainly welcome. It is above and beyond the 10%, I believe. We could include that or just leave that alone. We could include it in condition number 5. Just so it follows the process. I'm assuming you're proposing to deed that to the town as well?
Yes, well, I'm proposing that the town would be the grantee of the easement.
Okay.
I thought I'd use a form similar to what we used on Cherry Hill Road. So that's one that has been reviewed by the town attorney. I think it probably work with a little tweak or two. And yeah, no problem with you adding it to the condition on the deed. And I'll get that over to you and to Attorney Inescovich, along with the deed at the appropriate time for review.
Okay, So it would be de-transferring ownership of proposed open space. How about recording of an easement as well, a conservation easement, the proposed,
Yeah.
recording of the proposed conservation easement to the town of Branford and everything else, a deed transferring ownership of the proposed open space town of Branford, blah, 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 blah.
Works.
Okay, we put both form and content acceptable, blah, 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 blah. Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chuck and Sharon, thank you, Harry. Any other questions, comments from commission members?
Oh, that should be noted on the plan. There, it's covered.
That the area shown on the plan itself is that what you said, Joe? Excuse me.
Saying that's good that he puts it in the staff report or in the proposal. This way here, it's noted that we talked about it.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Any other questions or thoughts or comments? Now, does someone want to make approve the application with the findings and conditions as revised, as just discussed by staff?
Joe Vayuso approves.
Okay, motion made motion made by Joe Vayuso to approve. And is there a second?
Sharon Hutner.
Seconds.
We'll give it to Sharon. I heard her.
With Sharon.
Okay, Sharon gets a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Joe Vayuso?
Vayuso approves.
Joe Chadwick?
Chadwick approves.
Fred Russo?
Fred Russo in favor.
Sharon Hutner?
Sharon Hutner in favor.
And Chair is also in favor. And good luck, Milanos. Great to have you there. You'll be just skip, hopping a jump from the Legacy Theater across the street. And hope you love it.
Thank you very much to everyone. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Sharon Hutner here, and also the trolley trail.
That's right. Okay. So what else? New business. 85 Sunset Beach. A special exception coastal site plan, single family home with addition. I guess this just came in, and we will have a public hearing schedule on that. Is that going to be next meeting, you think, or?
Number 1 and 2 were submitted on the 17th of June. Number 3 was submitted on the 21st of June. We are hoping to and have tentatively placed an ad in the paper for all those 3 items to be heard on the 21st.
Okay.
Item number 4 was submitted a couple of days ago on the 5th of July and did not make the cutoff for submittal into the legal ad for the paper. So we'll have to hear that one on September 1st when we come back after the August break.
Great. Okay. So that's what we looking at. It's not too bad next meeting, it looks like. I know we have the Monowese application, the Buckley Road applications, and then we have these 3, but that's not too much. It's and maybe okay then. So other business then. So we covered those 4 items. Other business planners report. What's going on here?
If I could, before we do that, just ask the commission to consider adding another item to the agenda. It is to establish a soil and erosion control bond for the Parkside development. So that could be other business number 1, moving planners report to other business number 2.
Okay, well, do that. Did someone make a motion to add to the agenda a soil and erosion control bond for the Parkside development? Someone will make that a motion.
So moved by Chadwick.
Chadwick makes a motion. Is there a second?
Russo seconds.
Fred seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor of adding to the agenda? Joe Vayuso?
Joe Vayuso approves.
Joe Chadwick?
Chadwick in the affirmative.
Fred Russo? Fred? Where are you, Fred? Sharon?
Sharon Hutner approves.
Chair approves. Fred, are you there? Well, we got a majority anyway. So we've added it to the agenda.
Okay.
So what do we have?
I am.
There he is. All right.
There he is.
So I
Right
just
off.
shared Harry Smith, Town Planner. So here I have a memorandum you should be able to see from Dylan Willett, zoning enforcement officer, dated today, saying he's received the cost estimate from TPA Design Group, soil and erosion control. It includes several pieces. It's a little more extensive than usual. You're talking about 2 driveway aprons and a lot of the other detailed information for construction on the back edge of this. So the total proposed is now $47,250. And I can just show you the estimate that was revised today. This is all different pieces, linear feet of silt fence, 2 construction entrances, 20 silt traps, 1 temporary sedimentation trap, which is basically like a detention basin, and erosion control fabric on steep slopes. So that's the total figure, and that has been reviewed by the town engineering department, and that's why it was revised as of today for a slight increase of $500. So the recommendation is establish the bond in the amount of $47,250.
Chuck, understand. Thank you, Harry. Someone make a motion to approve the to accept a bond in the amount of $47,250 for the Parkside Village development.
Joe Vayuso approves.
Okay, Joe Vayuso makes that motion. Is there a second?
Chadwick seconds.
Second by Chadwick. Any further discussion? Joe Vayuso, are you in favor?
Vayuso in favor.
Chadwick.
Chadwick in favor.
Mr. Russo. Fred.
In favor. Fred.
Ms. Hutner.
Favor.
Sharon Hutner in favor.
And Chair is also in favor. Okay, so then that was new business, other business number 1, brings us then to the planner's report. Harry, what do you got to report to us?
Harry Smith, Town Planner. In your packet, we included an email from Sharon regarding a change in the state law to exempt certain electrical vehicle charging stations from property taxes and mandates, as well as mandating their installation at newly constructed facilities. So this will change what happens. We've been sort of asking, requesting, cajoling applicants on an ad hoc basis. But as of, I believe, January 1st of 2023, for larger projects, there will be a requirement for 25% of the facility's parking spaces to have EV charging stations. And there's another requirement for 30 or more spaces. I think that was all state facilities exceeding $100,000 in cost. For non-state facilities, it's 30 or more parking spaces. You'd have to install level 2 and direct current fast charging stations in at least 10% of the parking spaces, with a municipal option to increase the threshold above 10%. So we will track that as it may be promulgated into regulations at the state level, and give you further updates as it comes closer to the time when the law will take effect. And thank you, Sharon, for letting us know.
Harry, can I ask a question?
You're welcome.
Harry, Joe Vayuso,
Yep.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure. I mean, I don't know if I can answer, but go ahead.
I mean, they're talking, let's say, non-state, 10% of the.
Yeah.
Would that mean we would add 10% of more? They need to have 10% more parking.
No, it'd just be 10% of the station of the parking spaces proposed would need to be provided with EV charging stations. I believe level 2 or direct current fast charging.
Fast charging. What's fast charging mean? Half hour, 45 minutes?
I don't know exact definition. Sharon, I don't know if you know.
Yeah, Sharon Hutner here. There's 3 different levels of chargers, and fast charger would be the fastest, and it would be depending upon the battery capacity of the electric car that you have. So it probably would be, the fastest would be a half an hour. I mean, I heard some cars can do it in 20 minutes, but that's not the rule.
Does that mean that anybody can go there and charge their battery even if they don't do business in that?
Yes,
That they're
because there'll be public chargers.
That's not considered trespassing?
No,
Could
You mean on public property or private property? Wait.
Well, I think we're talking about private property, non-state facilities, assuming that's private property. You know, again, this might be elaborated on by possibly state regulations. So, yeah, it
Right.
may not be totally clear at this point. And I can also look into the legislative, history and the OLR bill analysis, and we'll try to get some more information together for the commission at a future meeting date.
Sharon Hutner here. I know that the incentive program for the electric chargers stipulates that the chargers have to be open to the public for you to get the money,
Okay.
the money.
Right.
So,
Okay.
but that's Eversource. So the regulations coming from the legislature may be very different.
Yeah. Okay. We will look into it more. And the only other item I have for you is sadly announce the resignation of our still new zoning enforcement officer, Dylan Willett. Has been here about a year. He is moving on to a position as assistant town planner in the town of Berlin. So we wish him continued success, but sorry to see him go. I don't think he's been to maybe 1 or 2 commission meetings. Hasn't been able to be here a lot, but so we've started the search for a new zoning enforcement officer. So if anyone knows anyone interested, I can't say we've actually done internal. We've done an internal posting. So it's limited at this point to members of, I believe, the union that he was a part of. But I expect an external announcement to be coming shortly. That's all I have. Is there anything else, Evan, you have that I'm forgetting, or you have anything additional, anything? No?
Nope.
All right.
Great, Chuck Anderson Chair. Thank you, Harry and Evan. Anyone got anything else? If not, does someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
Chuck, Fred Russo?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. I don't know what's going on with my Zoom, but I'm not at the beach. I'm looking at my camera in my kitchen in complete darkness, and I don't know how I can get my face on there because people say that they don't see my face, but
we are seeing a beautiful view of a tropical paradise.
Right.
We are seeing waves in a palm tree.
I don't know. What should I do?
We could try and help you offline. I think you've somehow put a photo in place of your video, but
maybe it's
yeah,
I tried to do something. I can't do it, but anyway.
It's sort of beyond me. I just have my messy office as a background.
I'm still here.
Yeah, Harry and Evan, that's you work for a town planning office, you become an IT specialist. So that's, give them a call. Maybe you could actually do a meeting together. Evan, you can Zoom with Fred and maybe say push this button or something,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, we'll try and help you out.
Thanks.
Probably
guys.
more Evan than me, actually.
Right. Okay.
I will do that. Thank you.
Yep.
You bet. Okay, someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
Promotion?
Okay.
I'd be happy to make a motion to adjourn. Fred Russo.
Okay. Fred made the motion. Is there a second?
Sharon Hutner seconds it.
Second by Sharon. Further discussion. All those in favor? Joe Vayuzo.
Vayuzo in favor.
Chadwick.
Chadwick in the affirmative.
Fred Russo.
Fred Russo in favor.
Sharon.
Sharon Hutner in favor.
And Chair's also in favor of adjournment. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for interrupting your vacation to chair the meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Nashville welcomes you. Okay.
Yep. Have a nice anniversary.
Enjoy the rest of it.
Okay.
Yep.
Good night.
Good night.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.